You don't want your employees to be idle, so why would you want your robots to be idle? Zebra Technologies is addressing idle robots by bringing their latest solution to the market, which requires 30% fewer robots, resulting in increased asset utilization and a cost-effective entry to automation for your fulfillment operations. The Zebra Symmetry fulfillment ecosystem is bringing you balanced utilization, more cubic capacity, and optimized pick paths so you can operate at peak performance. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Learn more at zebra.com or click the link in the show notes.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Wanda Riddick Johnson, who is a supply chain technology fellow at Deloitte. And we're going to talk a little bit about Deloitte and their supply chain focus today. And we're going to dive into a little bit more on the WMS side as well. What's kind of been happening in WMS, how to go about implementing and selection around WMS. And that is Wanda's specialty. So we're definitely happy to get her expertise and knowledge here on the podcast to talk to us about these warehouse management systems and also what Deloitte is up to on the supply chain side as well. So Wanda, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Kevin. Thanks for having me on the show today and looking forward to have this great conversation.
Absolutely. Happy to get you on here and definitely happy to be connected with you too over the last month or so. I think we got connected and I was very interested actually to hear about Deloitte's involvement on the supply chain side of the world and industry because I think typically we don't always think of Deloitte and think supply chain right away, right? So why don't you kind of kick us off here? Tell us a little bit about, specifically Deloitte's focus on supply chain and what you all do in that arena.
Great. For one, as far as Deloitte, so let me just give you a little background. The reason why I came to Deloitte is because of their supply chain practice. So I used to work for another firm, and due to Deloitte's expansion and their depth of knowledge and innovation in supply chain space, that is one of the main reasons I came to Deloitte. But Deloitte has a very deep supply chain offering. We have 6 different offers within our supply chain practice. I'm only going to focus on the one that I actually fall under, but we have product engineering and development. We have sourcing and procurement. We have our smart factory. We have planning and fulfillment, and we have our digital supply chain. I fall under our planning and fulfillment. And the piece that I am under is fulfillment. And under our fulfillment practice, we really focus on how do we actually help our clients understand some of the challenges they face and how we actually help them smooth out those challenges through technology, operational assessments, and other things. One of our main focuses is the logistics and distribution. I know people look at fulfillment, but fulfillment goes across several spectrums. Yeah. But under our L&D is really the network design, transportation management, and warehouse management. And I left warehouse management to the last because that is my expertise. And that's what we have a very large practice of practitioners, not only in the U.S., but in Mexico and in India, that we actually take that well-rounded team and help our clients implement. First, we help them select the WMS and do operation assessments and walkthroughs. But additionally from that, we help them do a vendor selection. And then we go through the process and we are a systems integrator. So we help you implement that warehouse management system, and as well as transportation management and helping you understand where your distribution centers are and what is the best place to improve those service levels and reduce costs.
Hmm. So a broad spectrum there, certainly covering just the fulfillment side there that you talked about, and then obviously, more on the supply chain practice as well. And obviously, we're the New Warehouse podcast, so we care about the fulfillment side. So we got the right person here, I think, right?
Yeah, you do.
So definitely. So very interested in diving into this with you here a little bit. And from the WMS side, I mean, it sounds like you do, from pretty much the end-to-end process, right, to making that happen. But you yourself have been specifically involved in WMS for quite some time now in warehouse management systems. So I guess tell us a little bit about, through your career, because, certainly I think, especially in the last couple of years, I mean, there's been a ton of changes around what, warehouse management systems look like and how they operate and what they can do. Tell us, for you specifically or personally, I mean, what have you seen throughout your career as some of like the biggest leaps or changes around just WMS in general?
Well, I started with WMS more than 20 years ago. I can use the word AS400,
Sure.
and now people are talking about iService. So I'm dating myself way back when I did PKMS for Manhattan. So that's been a long time ago. But one of the major changes, if you look at the evolution of warehouse management systems, I started on-prem. You had your data center sitting in your warehouse. Now, as you see the changes, it's cloud WMS, which is actually making it much easier for your upgrades, much easier for you to understand how to make some of those flexibility for the client, better business decisions, and how you can do adjustments. So that's one area that I have really seen a major change in. But the other big change is data analytics. If you think back in the day, we did all our manual reports, really didn't talk about business intelligence and all of that, but using all that data to actually make better decisions in your warehouse, not only with your workforce, but also how do you actually ship your orders and all that order management piece. I think the last one that I really want to focus on is machine learning. Now, I started with automation. I started with tilt trays. I started with shoe sorter. I pick to light, put to light. We still have that around, but now as we move forward, we see the more of the automation and how do you actually use more of the machine learning and those algorithms to continue to, how do you learn from your warehouse data to optimize those processes within your warehouse?
Hmm. Very interesting there. And obviously in 20 years, there's been, not just on the WMS side, but just in the warehouse industry in general, there's been a ton of evolution and change from a technology perspective and, just what's even possible to do now versus, 20 years ago there's a lot more you can do and a lot of different interesting ways to go about that and technologies that are out there. So it's very interesting to hear some of those changes now. So I guess tell us, now, and, when you look at all of these different changes, right, that you mentioned in there, some of the technologies and things that you're looking at and the capabilities that WMS has now, when you look at even just selection in general, I mean, how do you kind of guide or help a company navigate this, right? Because there's a lot to kind of digest. There's a lot to understand. There's a lot of capabilities to evaluate. How do you even start that selection process at this point with so many options out there?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Have you heard of Nucor Warehouse Systems? Well, they should definitely be on your radar. Forge a connection with the Nucor Warehouse Systems team at ProMat 2025 and learn about their sustainability, safety, automation, and end-to-end storage solutions in booth S1056. That's booth S1056. And make sure to join us on a panel hosted by Nucor Warehouse Systems on Monday, March 17th at the Sustainability Transportation Theater, where I will be moderating a discussion on the process of recycling steel and how companies can reach sustainability goals within the warehouse. We will see you in Chicago.
Yes, it is a lot of options. Really, it depends. First thing, what we always look at is, what is your footprint? So if you're in retail consumer products, what is the best solution that WMS is out there? But before you really start that journey of selecting your WMS, what we do, we want to come in and do an assessment. Because a lot of times as we talked about over 20 years, some of the people that we work with, they they are still using old WMS systems. And those WMSs are not as robust as the ones that we have today. And then a lot of them want to understand, how do I integrate automation? How can I actually, combat the issues of my workforce challenges? So what we like to do, and what I have done, is I go in first, write up a roadmap, understand what is your current systems that you have in place, current operations, current processes. Once you do all of that, then how do we map it out to say, what does your future look like? What is those new business requirements? We don't want to do like for like, because as we just talked about, we talked about cloud WMS. So we want to make sure we select a WMS that will actually be sustainable for you. And not only that, is also, when we gather all those requirements, let's take those requirements and start matching it to what vendors. It may be 10 WMS. Well, we know it's a whole lot more than that. We want to make a short list. So let's get a short list, maybe less than 5. And based on those 5 WMS vendors, how do we actually do a comparison between each one of those? That actually, which one will actually meet at minimum without any modifications, keyword modifications? How do you can implement that with at least 80 to 90% of that base functionality? That way, you lower your risk of when you're ready to do an upgrade. It's not really an upgrade; it is an upgrade. So those things that we really would like to do, and then the other thing is, it's the integration. So what is your ERP? You may have SAP, you may have Oracle, or you may have another ERP. And how does that integration work? So all those things together is our journey of how do we actually. And I'm doing this in less than a 5-minute chat with you, but it takes a little longer to do that. But we want to make sure that when we go in, we talk to the right people. That means the people that's actually doing the work, because one thing that we really want to consider is change management. So when you go through that WMS selection, you have people that's been in that warehouse, that's been doing that same work in that same system for how many years? 10 years.
Right.
And that's an adoption of change. So it's a lot of things that come along with that journey of your selection. But the main thing is, how do we select? How do we create a short list of the vendors that actually match our business requirements? And then how do we actually go through and do some demos with those vendors? So that way you can actually see the system, feel it. And also, not only that, how do we actually go and do some due diligence? Talk to other clients, other customers that's actually using that system, go to their warehouse, walk their distribution center, and understand that whole end-to-end process. And that way you can understand not only this is what we from Deloitte has, hey, this is our recommendation and this is what we're suggesting, but also what we're doing for you is we're working side by side and talking to other clients that have this solution too.
Yeah, I love that. And I love both of those aspects that you touched on there. One being, talk to, the people that are using this on a daily basis, right? What are challenges they're having? What are the problems they're having? And, how do we address those? But then also, going and seeing like, okay, well, this is what the after could look like at other operations or customers that have put in this same system or same setup before. And I think getting that, real world, in a sense, understanding of the problem, and then the real world understanding of, what does the solution potentially look like, I think takes it to a whole nother level, right, of understanding of what you're going to be doing. Because I think it is a challenge, definitely. I mean, I talked to a smaller 3PL just yesterday, actually, and they were saying they just they thought they were switching to WMS that would work for them, and they just got under a year contract and they had to get rid of it at the end of the year, and like, we just wasted so much money because it wasn't the right fit for us, right? And I think there's some misalignment there and some misunderstanding of like what is the actual right fit and how do we go about to figure that out. I'm curious. I mean, you talked about cloud solutions, right? And I think most newer WMSs are certainly on the cloud. But do you see anybody still wanting to go with an on-prem solution, or is that pretty much just phasing out at this point?
No, I've run across clients sometime in your life science and your pharmaceutical space where that they have a lot of sensitive information in their data and their R&D and all that, and they feel more comfortable staying on the on-prem. And then a client I just recently did about a couple years ago, they stayed on-prem because of that reason, and just to make sure there's no leakage in their data, and data, integrity. So, but you don't really have that issue with going on the cloud. But what we always want to talk to a client about is what they're comfortable with. It's not what I may make a recommendation, but we want to make sure that they're happy. And to just your point, 3PL, WMS, when you implement, you got so many different tenants in that building compared to one, retailer that's all they have is they're shipping their product to a customer or e-com. You have to take all those things into consideration. And going back to on-prem, a lot of people are comfortable with that. They know it's stable, and people still have concerns about being on the cloud, but going in that direction with a WMS moving toward the future and to stay competitive in the marketplace with your upgrades is a solution that you should consider.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I guess that makes sense. People that are a little more sensitive about the data aspect and things of that nature. But I mean, you certainly, I think if you go on prem, I mean, you certainly do lose some of those benefits, like you said, to be able to have consistent updates. And I remember my first role in my career working for a company, and that's how I ultimately got into the warehouse world. But we did an upgrade of our system, and we were on prem. It was Manhattan at the time, and uh, and yeah, it was like, I couldn't believe it. How long it took to do the upgrade, and then by the time we were done the upgrade, it was like, oh well, and then they told me like, oh well, this is actually the version that came out like 3 years ago, right? And I was like, as a younger person at the time, I was just like, what? This is insane. This is crazy. They're like not fully understanding like how the industry worked at that time. I'm like, this is wild, right? But I think that it's interesting to see that and that shift happening as well. So I'm curious. I mean, on that side, what do you see? In the last year, maybe last 2 years or so. I mean, what is some of the top reasons that companies are looking to switch their WMS or looking for a new option? What are some of those drivers that are really impacting that?
I think one of the drivers that they're looking to implement a WMS, a new one, or on cloud is if you look at all the changes that you see within the warehouse, you want to improve your processing time. You want to ensure that the system that you put in is going to be around for some period of time, because implement a WMS, you're not going to do it every 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah.
It's costly. So they're looking at, if I integrate this to my ERP, if I integrate this to automation, one of the biggest challenges everybody's facing is workforce and having labor shortages. So when they start looking at WMS, they're looking at, hey, how can I actually improve my picking efficiency, my unloading? And if I do all of that, if I have a robust WMS that has a good list of different systems requirements baked in, as I move along my journey and as I move along, increasing my footprint or increasing my throughput, I know this WMS is able to handle all of those different nuances that's coming along. But I think the main reason is, hey, I know I want to stay ahead of the marketplace. I want to stay in the market with making sure I have the right product to my right customer. It's all about your end customer nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that customer experience has become so critical, right? Especially as we move to more omni-channel and more e-commerce specifically, right? That touch point with your customer is when they receive that box and open it, right? So being able to facilitate an experience, I think, is super critical. I mean, did you see that, the shift of that, certainly, I think we've talked about it plenty of times on this podcast and all around the world, right? The pandemic, and that shift to e-commerce and the explosion there. I mean, did you see that there was an uptick in people looking to adjust their WMS or around that time or coming out of the pandemic due to kind of this consumer behavior shift?
Yes, really, right after the pandemic, a lot of the surge of, can you come in and help me do assessment of where I am today and where I should be? The one major thing came out of is everybody had brick and mortar. A lot of people had the brick and mortar stores.
Right.
And then the foot traffic in those stores, people still are going into the stores, but more people are going online. So how do I actually build my WMS that it could be, hey, I could ship to store out of that same location, but also I can actually satisfy e-com order out of that same warehouse. And that way I'm not actually building a new warehouse. A lot of people they had a distribution center for shipping to their stores or shipping to a third party vendor. Like if you ship from Ralph Lauren to Dillard's or Built, I'm from the South, so I'm using all those stores. And then you start looking at, okay, now I drive down 85 now, and it's a Bloomingdale's big e-fulfillment center that's sitting off of 85. But they're not only doing Bloomingdale's out of that facility, probably they're doing their Macy's and all these other brands. So how do they actually take and use a WMS that can actually do multi-brands on the channel 2.0 that I actually can say, okay, I'm going to actually ship it to a store to pick it up for a customer, or I could ship it to you direct to your house, direct to the consumer, which has always been the case. But now, how do I actually use that WMS to be more, hey, how can I fit all my different type of customers that I need to satisfy? And not only satisfy those customers, but within that four walls of that warehouse, how can I actually make sure I am more efficient in picking this product that, as I said, you can go to this pick face and I can pick out a product to ship to a customer, but also I can go to my case pick or my full pallet and do a full pallet of product to a third party customer or whomever it may be. There's
Interesting.
so many different animals out, and I hate to say animals, but different variations
Yeah.
that before I just think about when I years ago, before I got into consulting, I came from industry. So I used to work for TJ Maxx and then I worked for Ralph Lauren. So, that's two different spectrums. You got the full price and you have the off price. Totally different footprint, how you do your business requirements. But now when I was still at Ralph Lauren, I did outlet division, ended with that wholesale division out of the same building. And now as you look at, as they are growing, they have their e-fulfillment centers. They do a lot more. But that is where the journey for warehouse management systems and distribution, all L&D, that's the direction that so many people want to go in. How do I actually do, as you talked about, omnichannel?
Yeah. And I think it's been so interesting to see, just the different technologies and solutions that have kind of come out of that, right? As, people are trying to navigate these more complex things. And as you said, do multiple different types of business or parts of their business out of one facility, right? Like, how do we make that happen, right? And how do we do that from, systems perspective, from a physical perspective, all these different complex layers there to be able to do that. So I'm curious, I mean, from your perspective, because, I'm sure you look at tons of WMSs that are out there, and, you mentioned there's certainly a lot more than just 10 WMSs to choose from, right? So we've seen a lot of, WMSs kind of startup as well, in the past few years, coming out of the pandemic too, part of the reaping those complexities, kind of spurring that. I mean, what is your view on some of the startup WMSs out there, and how do you, maybe as a someone that's going to be an end user, I mean, how do you navigate that, and how do you understand, like, because you want a software that's going to stick with you for quite some time. As you mentioned, you're not going to do a WMS implementation or change every 2 years, right? You don't want to, at least. But how do you kind of navigate some of these newer offerings in the market too, as well, and how do you kind of I guess advise people, how to look at them to see if they're going to reach that maturity level that makes sense for like a big investment.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Are you looking to grow sales this year? Strategic Marketing Communications can help you do that. For more than a decade, Master Plans Communications, Marketing, and PR has been building awareness and creating demand for material handling companies. MPC offers strategic marketing and PR planning, media relations, video productions, photography, websites, digital marketing, social media, and more. Connect with MPC at masterplancommunications.com and on LinkedIn.
Well, you're right. It's a lot of startups. It's a lot of small ones. And one thing when people come and they talk about a WMS, sometimes they want to look at low cost. Well, low cost can actually bite you down the road. So and some of the startups are great startups, and it may be best for your business, but also one key piece when you start looking at a startup, sometimes they're private, so you may not be able to get a lot of the financial information, but you do need to dig a little more. Think about if a startup just started on a year ago.
Yeah.
Let's see where they are and, what their growth was and what clients they actually implemented at WMS. Now you have a startup, and people still say startup after 3 years because still they are very new.
Yeah.
But let's do, as I talked about before, you always need to do your due diligence. You need to go through and really check their financial stability, even if they're not on Wall Street, but still you should be able to talk to whatever customers they have. What does their support model look like? How many employees do they have? Because now if they have started up and they have 3 different customers, and now you're the 4th customer, and you have issues or you may want to do an upgrade, you may want to change, or you want to do that. Do they have enough employees to help do that bandwidth? How do they transfer that knowledge? Customer support, people don't think about that until sometime after the fact, but you really need to understand that, and you need to understand, look at their package. What's in their package compared to I'm saying, you gather your business requirements.
Yeah.
You did that. But I always believe in this. Whenever you do a selection, that's the software vendor saying, hey, I'm a fit. I always tell people, hey, you should get another set of eyes, like a systems integrator, to come in to help you understand how do you actually make sure you make the right decision. Sometimes you can go along just with talking to the WMS vendor, but as a startup, it's just understanding their base functionality. You don't really want to do a lot of modifications probably with a startup. But the key back to all of it is, how does it align to your business requirements? How does it align to what does your future growth look like? But the bottom line is, what is their financial stability? And additionally, do a due diligence. Go talk to their customers that they had implementing that system. And is it the same industry that is a like for like? Everything is not always like for like, but is it similar to your footprint that you actually ship to your customers?
Interesting. Yeah. And I think that's great advice there, because I think it is, sometimes it's a challenge, right? To think like, oh, well, this company is new, but the solution sounds like, it's like the perfect fit for us, right? But can we, guarantee that they're still going to be here in 2 or 3 years, right? To support us, right? So I think that's a great thing to kind of look under the hood, I guess, in a sense, and kick the tires a little bit and see, kind of like, well, one, are they financially stable, right? Can they even financially survive for another 2 or 3 years? And who's using them already? And let's talk to them. I think that goes back to your initial point earlier in the conversation about looking at internally of what are our needs, but then also externally, like who's using this with success already, right? And who is using the solution, and what what can this look like for me? So I think it's really great advice there, and definitely appreciate the insights there on the kind of that evaluation and navigating the somewhat crowded market, we'll say, of WMS there as well. So now, additionally, from Deloitte's perspective, you mentioned a little bit in the smart factory side there, but I also have a smart warehouse experience too, I think is my understanding. So tell us a little bit about the smart warehouse experience that Deloitte has created.
Well, we have the Smart Factory that's in Wichita. That is actually, we bring customers or potential clients to walk through, and it's the innovative center where they can actually see from end to end, from the manufacturing side, because we have a manufacturing line there, to what it looks like and understand what their requirements are. But our biggest smart factory, we call it Smart Factory in Wichita. And in Montreal, we have a smart factory, but it's a smart warehouse where that we actually have highly automated technology in there. We have auto store, we have a pack size in there, we have other technologies, we have an unloader, and the client can actually come and sit down, or potential client, and go through, this is where they are today and what does tomorrow look like. And we could take them through all these different use cases that we have built around technology and how they integrate to either SAP, Manhattan, Blue Yonder, whatever your WMS may be or may not be. But our key focus is not only automation, but actually how all that data that we collect, because it is a working manufacturer in Wichita. We do produce kits. We produce a rover kit that is for STEM that we actually ship out to high schoolers,
Oh, wow.
and they can actually build that robot. So a lot of times people think, oh, it's just a showcase.
Yeah.
Not just a showcase. It's actually where we actually build out these kits and we ship them out, and the students can actually, so it's actually us giving back to the community of how do they actually can do, STEM and STEAM, either one of those. How do we actually use that information to actually build our next generation of engineers?
Yeah, I love that. And, I love that it's, really working and producing something, because I think, a lot of times you hear about demo centers or innovation centers and things like that, which are very cool, but they're just kind of like, on loops, just showing basically a demo, right? Like not actually doing the real work. And I think, that can make it certainly a difference to see like, well, how is this actually, happening when, something live is going on there. So you use the term smart there, both smart factory, smart warehouse. So I mean, how does Deloitte define like the idea of a smart factory or a smart warehouse? What does that actually mean?
Well, I won't say where Deloitte may define that, because we know across industry, across supply chain, people talk about smart warehouse all the time.
Yeah.
The smart warehouse, in the essence of how we're looking at it, is a highly automated and intelligent facility that actually leverages technologies like AGVs, ASRs, robotics that actually help optimize your warehouse operation. So, and that's really a smart warehouse. But not only smart warehouse there, but how do you use all that data? We go back to machine learning, we go back to AI. How do you use all that data to collect and make decisions on, hey, connectivity? People now use 5G in their warehouses. How do they actually use that Bluetooth? Smart warehouse can be also coupled with your tablets. So you're back in the day when there was no such thing as tablets in the warehouse. The tablets didn't even exist,
Yeah.
or the mobile app. So we always had the standard RF devices that, you use, but now you use your smartphone. You can scan it, you can get all the data. So if you think about smart warehouse and defining what that is, that's all those evolutions of technology that you can use to make your end user smarter, but also smarter technology to actually make sure your customer, everything goes back to your customer. How do I get my product to my customer efficiently, effectively, and on time using that smart technology?
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's very interesting to see those evolutions. Like even just the tablet you mentioned there kind of gave me a flashback. I had got a job one time in my career, and they gave me an iPad as, part of my, laptop, iPad, cell phone, and they gave me the iPad, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I can use this on the floor to look at the WMS and stuff like that. And they're like, oh no, like you could just, you could check your emails on it. And I'm like, well, I already have a laptop and a phone. Like, it just sat in my drawer like the whole time I worked there. I didn't do anything with it, but to hear that evolution and what we can do, and from not only a software perspective, but then from like the actual user experience and how do we deliver that onto different devices, I think has come such a long way. Super exciting to be able to give that user experience kind of that next level of treatment, which I think is such a great thing. So very interesting to dive into these different topics with you here, Wanda, and learn from you today and your depth of knowledge here. So you guys are going to be at ProMat this year as well, I think for the first time, I think is my understanding. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what people can expect from Deloitte at ProMat?
So let me make sure this is the first time that we're going to have a booth at ProMat,
Yes. Okay.
but Deloitte has always partnered with MHI, and we've written the annual industry report. So for the last 12 years, we've been writing a report with MHI. So we've always spoke on the stage on that Wednesday to release of the report at ProMat, and we have a panel discussion. So this year, I would be I was 2 years ago too at Modex. This year, it's 2025 now. I keep saying this year is 2025.
Yeah.
But in March, I will be the moderator on the stage with the release of the new report. And then additionally, this year, as I said, we're going to have a booth. And our booth is in the supply chain building. But also, we will actually have 2 sessions. We'll have one session on Automate to Accelerate. That's going to be on that Monday. If you go onto MHI ProMat site, you'll see that it'll be at 1:30, 45 minutes. Discuss the session of how automation has accelerated over the years, but also understanding that it will be a panel discussion. And we have some great people that's going to be sitting on the panel to talk about that. Then the other one is Omnichannel 2.0. One of our partners, he has a deep background in omnichannel. He actually used to work for Manhattan and a lot of other places, but he has a very keen, and another young lady who's going to be talking with him, talking about Omnichannel 2.0. And that would be on that Tuesday, March 18th, that we will be presenting that in the afternoon.
All right. Awesome. And we definitely look forward to seeing you there at ProMat. And I think you guys will be joining us on our live stream additionally as well. So definitely excited for that, and really appreciate all the knowledge that you shared with us today on kind of the somewhat crowded and complex WMS side of the industry, and really appreciate you coming on and talking to me here. So if people want to get in touch or learn more about the supply chain side of Deloitte, what's the best way to do that?
Well, you can actually contact me, Wanda Johnson. That's wjohnson@deloitte.com. You can actually find me on LinkedIn under Wanda Riddick Johnson. And I will, if I'm not the right person to talk to you about, I can talk to you about warehouse management systems and automation, but also on any other areas that I talked about at the beginning. If you have a need there in manufacturing or product engineering, just reach out to me and I will connect you with the right person.
All right. Sounds great. And we'll definitely put all that information in the show notes here, as well as at thenewwarehouse.com, so people can easily find them. And really appreciate you coming on and joining me today, Wanda. So thank you once again for your time.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes. And for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.